An international conference is underway in London to help Ukraine recover and rebuild from the conflict. Kyiv says it needs more than $6 billion in the next 12 months. European Commission President Ursula Von der Leyen has pledged $54 billion for a 3-year period starting next year. Washington says it will provide $1.3 billion in additional financial assistance to Ukraine for its reconstruction efforts. The World Bank estimates the costs of the war at about $411 billion so far. Ukraine's president appeared on video and urged donors to take concrete steps.
I want to thank you. And of course, I thank Switzerland, Germany, France, Italy, every country where we have agreed on key principles for recovery. At this conference, we must move from vision to agreements and from agreements to real projects.
The U.S. Secretary of State said Russia will eventually pay for the damage done to Ukraine.
Even as we come together here in London, committed to supporting Ukraine's build-up, Russia continues to try to burn it down. So, let's be clear. Russia is causing Ukraine's destruction, and Russia will eventually bear the cost of Ukraine's reconstruction.
Let's speak now to Nadim Baba, who's at the conference in London for us. Nadim, this conference raises a really interesting question. After 16 months of war in a country as large as Ukraine, what's the bill? How much does it really cost to rebuild?
Well, Cyril, of course, all figures are estimates at the moment. We heard from the World Bank recently, they think in the short term, the reconstruction of Ukraine's economy could cost $14 billion US. In total, over perhaps decades, they've put the figure at more than $400 billion US. Now, things are moving, and it's a mixture of money directly from government, direct assistance, like that $1.3 billion announced by the US, and loan guarantees. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, before the two-day conference started, said that Britain was trying to arrange loan guarantees through the World Bank to Ukraine of more than $3 billion for the immediate term. But beyond that, politicians are talking about some sort of Marshall Plan type approach to Ukraine, similar to what happened in the rebuilding of Germany after World War II. But the crucial difference, of course, is that the conflict in Ukraine is still ongoing. There's a lot of fear. And so, for example, in the last couple of hours, France's foreign minister speaking here said that her country was going to introduce a war insurance mechanism which would basically guarantee any companies in France pledging to invest in Ukraine. There are huge investments being talked about, particularly in tech and the energy sector. These estimates of the cost, I should point out, were drawn up before that destruction of the dam in southern Ukraine, and all probably depend on how long the war actually continues.
Nadim, tell us a bit more, if you can, about this notion floated by the U.S. Secretary of State, Antony Blinken, that we just played. He said Russia should ultimately pay for all of this.
Well, look, you won't find anybody here who will say otherwise. That's been repeated by various political leaders who say that Russia is clearly the aggressor and that Russia in the long term will have to be made to pay. What's happening? Well, already the UK, for example, since the full-scale invasion last year, have seized around $23 billion in Russian assets in this country and imposed sanctions on more than 1,500 people, many of them linked to the Russian government. Last month, G7 leaders said that they would go ahead and seize around $300 billion US, huge amounts of Russian assets in their banks and institutions, including here in the United Kingdom, until Russia pays for the damage that it's caused. Now, the European Central Bank has already warned the EU that doing so, that seizing funds or taking interest earned in Russian accounts and using that directly to give to Ukraine could actually create a lot of instability on the markets. People wouldn't have confidence in the euro currency. We don't know how fast things will move on that front, but there is a clear determination in the absence of any Russian willingness to pay for the damage, as they say, to actually take tough action and to seize those assets, which are immense, just in this country, for example.
Nadim Baba reporting from London. Thank you very much.